afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or evening, depending on what time I decide to premiere this episode. We are here. We are back again, another week. This time we're talking Pearl Harbor, the 80th anniversary of the attack, December 7th, day which will live in infamy. A little late, a couple days afterwards, but that's how we like it. We're always late, but we'll get there.
Our work schedules will align perfectly one of these days.
Probably with licorice pizza involved, or even Spider-Man.
Yeah,
just our luck. Spider-Man will have it out. Yeah. So 80 years later, Pearl Harbor. Interesting event to say the least. That has been depicted in multiple movies. Mm-hmm. But
multiple movies about multiple different aspects of our world.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you want to say any words about Pearl Harbor? I don't know.
Well, I'll say what I accidentally said before we started recording. Let's just run that whole conversation back. So yeah,
have you been to the? I know the answer to this, but have you been to the?
Yes, I went
to Arizona
the
Memorial.
The memorial over in Oahu.
Yes.
So the way it works is that there is the base itself, which has because it's still a Navy base to this day, I think.
Yes.
So there's the museum aspect of it, and then you can take a little ferry out to the water and see the wreck itself. And I think that's why most people go, because they take you to the USS Arizona, which is... It's sunk, but it's not like Titanic sunk, where it's at the bottom of the ocean. You can still see the wreck beneath you. And...
Because the water is very shallow.
Yes.
In the harbor.
And it was also a big boat.
And it was a ginormous boat.
Yeah.
Ship. You call them ships.
Whatever.
You get sailors mad at you in the comment section.
And you mean my dad?
And also my dad.
So it's you were saying it's on your bucket list. I would definitely recommend it. It's still a national park, so if you're interested in visiting national parks, it's at least on that list. I would say, and you were saying your parents agree with me on this, it is kind of a freaky experience because thousands of people died, and a lot of them died by drowning. And so when you actually visit the memorial and you go out on the water and you see the boat, you're just that thought of there's still bodies down there, or at least corpses, and you still see the oil coming out of the ship, and you're just like, is it like, should I even be here? This is a little almost disrespectful to be out here on the water over this boat. But as a piece of history, it's still something to see, nevertheless.
From what I've read and heard, it's a similar experience visiting as if you go to like Auschwitz or some other concentration camp that they have.
For sure.
Where it's just like, I appreciate the fact that we are memorializing history and remembering what happened, but at the same time, this feels a little bit like immoral to be treading on people's graves, really. Mm-hmm.
Shout out to everybody who takes Instagram photos over at Auschwitz.
God, I hope you guys die in a fiery death. Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think that such a cataclysmic. Sorry, I always forget the second C. Event that it really defines our country is 80 years old, which it feels so much farther away, and yet 80 years is really not that much in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, for real. It's basically, people probably don't look at it like this, but it's basically the 9/11 of...
Oh, no, 100%. Yeah. It's, yeah.
At least insofar as it brought us into a war.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess we'll...
Now, do you want to talk about these movies in chronological order?
We can do that. So I think there's three definitive movies, and if you agree with us, you're wrong, because Google also agrees with us. It was literally I looked up Pearl Harbor movies, and the first three that popped up were these movies.
Or just so happened to be the three that we watched.
That we are going to... There's obviously a whole wide spectrum of them. Mm-hmm. There's a whole lot of movies out there in the world, just in period.
Yeah.
Shout out to James's dad for giving us a whole list to look at that we didn't really get to it all.
Well, we also only had like half a week to watch these.
So yeah. But so the three movies are Tora Tora, Pearl Harbor, and the new Midway, directed by Roland Emerick, not the old one. That we are gonna talk about today. Yeah, I guess let's go in chronological order. Tora Tora. Well, I'll say this. Let's preface this. These movies, and we talked about this on a car ride, do a really good job of kind of portraying the first 6 months of the war to a degree, and even like 3 years prior to the war.
Yeah.
Especially in the case of Midway, which I found really fascinating that, you know, obviously these movies are based on real events, so obviously they're going to have overlapping characters and the attack itself. Yeah. But I thought it was really cool to be like watching Tora Tora, and then they're talking about Admiral Halsey, and it's like, I know who Admiral Halsey is.
He was in another movie.
And they shout out a couple of the pilots in Tora Tora, and the pilots, those pilots that they shout out in Tora Tora are in Midway, and that's like who we follow throughout Midway.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool to actually see like the working mechanics of.
Or my favorite fact was the pilots who during the attack on Pearl Harbor managed to get airborne and fight against the Japanese Zeros. In Tora Tora are the real people, but in Pearl Harbor are just the Ben Affleck vehicle.
Yeah, we'll talk about Pearl Harbor and how much there's a lot of controversy surrounding that movie. But Tora, sorry. A 19.
You didn't even have it pulled up.
I had it pulled up. Oh, I didn't have it pulled. Crap. All right, sorry guys. Oh no, I do have it pulled up. Here it is. How hard is it to find the year? There you go. 1970 movie. Surprisingly, really, really well done. A lot of critics really like this movie for its you know, obviously there's a massive attack sequence that every Pearl Harbor movie is gonna have, but just how historically accurate and authentic it is in just depicting the events prior to and after, after the attack. There's a wonderful channel called History Buffs. I would recommend going and watching him.
Too. Yeah.
He breaks down this movie as well as the other movies we talk about. Just a whole lot better than we could ever do it. So
well, he goes more into the history aspect.
Yeah. So we will. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
If you want to see what exactly is so historically accurate about this movie, just go watch that movie. But this is a really good movie just on its own. I really appreciated it for the practical effects, which, you know, it's the 70s and
that's true. Yeah.
Cinematic, you know, CGI was not a thing at all whatsoever. So everything is caught in camera in real tangible.
I mean, this is the 70s.
Sets.
Even Star Wars was using miniatures and practical effects back then. And that's definitely watching this one after having watched Midway and Pearl Harbor. It was definitely like, I could tell these are all miniatures, and, you know, there's a way that they frame certain shots that you can just tell how it's, you know.
Well, it's very noticeable when you see the Japanese pilots in the cockpit, and then it's like you could tell it's a matte painting around them or something.
Or there was one where a boat gets bombed and they do an interior of like the brig, and you can tell it's like everybody's like, whoa, but only the background outside is moving.
Yeah,
for sure. Which is not to say like that's just what they had at the time. I mean, we look back on that and we say that's
but it should be noted,
cheesy and campy.
There are some really cool actual practical effects. Like there's the scene when the airplane's trying to take off and then it crashes into a bunch of other jets. That was real. That wasn't. That was like, I was looking it up, and History Buffs breaks it down. But basically, what they were trying to do is they rigged the plane to take off, to go on a straight line, and it was just going to explode on its own. So what happened is it got off of the rail line and actually went into the crowded planes. So the actors that are running away from the plane are actually running away for real life.
Jesus.
Because they don't actually want to die.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's stuff like that where it's like, that's cool to look at. Yeah. Also extremely unsafe and a commentary on filmmaking in the 70s.
Like, for practical effects, what I appreciate is at least the explosions are real.
Yeah.
You know, which was arguably my biggest issue with Midway was too much CGI.
Yeah.
What I did appreciate about this movie, though, is how much of the Japanese perspective it shows.
Yes.
Even more so than Pearl Harbor, which Midway shows like none.
Yeah.
Well, Midway shows some when it gets to the midway part of Midway.
Yeah.
But Pearl Harbor will show some of the Japanese perspective, but whether it's accurate or not, I don't know. But this one is like 50-50 pretty much.
Yeah.
Even the title of the movie is in Japanese. So if you go in expecting it to be entirely in English, what were you expecting?
Which I actually liked.
Yeah.
I hate when movies... It's one thing if we're, it's a Russian movie or a movie that takes place in Russia and they're speaking English.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's another thing entirely when it's two conflicting nations with different languages warring and they're speaking the same language.
Yeah.
That annoys the hell out of me. So these three movies actually do that really well, which I appreciate. Just as like that's just a personal flavor kind of thing.
No, for sure. Well, I also think
also because Japanese sounds dope. I love the way Japanese people talk.
Because just the nature of the attack of Pearl Harbor, what happened, the element of surprise, it's just juicy to show the planning of that surprise, and then contrast that with the ignorance of what's going to happen. That's just like storytelling 101 right there, right? That's dramatic irony.
Yeah.
And so it's obvious why all these movies would bother showing the Japanese perspective, as opposed to, why some other war movies would just not bother showing a Japanese perspective on the battle, where it's like, well, there's not an element of surprise, or it's not that interesting, or, we just want to watch Americans kill people.
Yeah.
But it's like, for these movies specifically, that dramatic irony definitely plays into why they would show so much of the Japanese perspective in all three of these movies.
Sure.
For sure.
Should be noted that there were two different shooting teams on this movie. So
yes.
Richard Fleischer, I don't know how to pronounce that. He shot all the American sequences, and he's kind of the director per se. But the Japanese sequences were shot by a separate team, Toshio Masuda and Kinji Fukasaku. I'm not Japanese, so I apologize.
It sounds cool, except when you're speaking Japanese.
I apologize immediately for my butchering of that. But it should be noted that because of it being split between an American team, and I don't know why this is popping up on my computer.
Computer's glitched.
That there's less bias in terms of how we present each side, in a way. Because the Americans look like idiots in this movie, and it is very easy, and that's an issue I kind of somewhat have with Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
Where the Americans are like the machismo, like alpha dogs. And in this movie, they just look dumb, and I appreciated that. Because if you go and research, there were so many fail-safes to make sure this attack never happened, and they just were never followed up on. All the way until the first bomb fell, really.
Yeah.
And
Which
so
I appreciate about the movie Midway.
Yeah.
Was that they're on Midway, they're constantly like, yeah, we should have listened to you.
Yeah.
You were right the whole time.
Yeah. So, I enjoyed this movie. I really did. It was it's a long movie. I'll say that much.
It's a long movie, and it is from the 70s, so it's a little campy.
It's a little dated.
And dated for sure. But for an older, accurate representation. And what was nice was it's almost exclusively just the military aspect of it.
Yeah.
Which part of the reason why we didn't watch the older Midway, even though we still watched Pearl Harbor, is because for some reason people... Okay. I guess we'll kind of transition into Pearl Harbor now. But when it comes to like war movies, it's so interesting. You know how when we were in film school and everybody would talk about how character is the most important part?
Yeah.
People are going to be invested in your characters.
Yeah.
I think with war movies, that does not apply.
No, I agree.
100%.
I agree.
And part of the reason why movies like the original Midway and Pearl Harbor, why they fail, even though the original one isn't bad, it's that they almost over-focus on character.
Yeah.
And they include these melodramatic... Well, they include relationship subplots that naturally appear melodramatic, at least compared to, people literally dying in war.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, maybe don't focus on your character so much.
Yeah, I like Tortora because there's such a wide ensemble of cast members, and a thing that I've heard other critics have said this is what caused the movie to not be a financial success. I personally think it's a strength is that none of the main cast members are big name actors in terms of at least like 70 movie stars.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's one or two in there that are probably, and we're just not smart enough to do our research and look it up. But
from the 70s.
Yeah. But regardless, don't come at me in the comments. But I thought that was cool because it's, it feels like we're actually watching these real people. These were all real people. And so it's cool to watch them, how they either caused or planned this attack. Can't say the same about Pearl Harbor.
Well, to your point, in terms of like other World War II movies, I think that's a strength of stuff like Band of Brothers and the Pacific. Yeah. Even. Where it's like, maybe I recognize the actors, but I just don't even know their names. And so I feel like I see more of the character than I do the actor.
Yeah.
Which in war movies, especially stuff like Tortora, where you're dealing so much with the strategy behind it. And that's like, it's all exposition pretty much.
Yeah.
For like an hour and a half.
Yes.
That's what you have to pay attention to. Not seeing the actor and just seeing the character definitely helps with eating up all that exposition dump.
For sure.
Unlike Pearl Harbor.
Which you said you actually liked. What did you like about it?
You describe movies as being like, oh, it's, a matinee Tuesday, it's on FX.
Yeah.
I got nothing else to do today, I'll just have it on. I think it's fine as that. No, here's what I said. I said if I could make a new cut of this movie.
Yes.
And remove all of the romance, this movie would be way, way, way better. Even despite the historical inaccuracies, just as, like, because I think if you've watched this podcast enough, you know that I have no problem with action movies whatsoever, as the only person on earth who likes shaky cam. Even as a dumb action movie, I think this is perfectly serviceable. At least, I preferred the special effects in this movie to Midway. Just because in Midway, it felt like everything was CGI.
Yeah.
What I at least respect about Michael Bay is that he combines practical and
there's
CGI.
actually, I actually went to watch the attack scene again, and I was surprised that there's actual explosions.
Yeah.
Like, does he know how to do that?
Yeah. Well, to what degree filmmakers are really smart, and so it's like, to what degree something is practical or isn't. Like, there's a scene where they bomb a airstrip, and all the planes are out on the airstrip.
Yeah.
And it's like, it all looks practical. To what degree, maybe 5 planes, and then there's just the rest of it is all CGI. Even still, it looks cool. It looks more real than Midway, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And Michael Bay is good at that. Both Michael Bay and Roland Emerick. But when it comes to combining both practical and CGI, Michael Bay is actually a good director.
When he wants to be.
On those terms only.
When he wants to be.
Yeah, when he wants to be. But if you remove the romance whatsoever, I could just deal with it as a cheesy, bad action movie. But it also sucks.
A lot of historical inaccuracies, which I think...
Yeah. Which is why I specifically want to say it's just an action movie.
Yeah.
And not like a World War II movie.
I think actually there's a quote in here somewhere from someone that says, like, don't take it as a textbook. It is on the careeraftermilitary.com's 10 most inaccurate military movies ever made, which include The Patriot, Hurt Locker, U-571, The Green Berets, Wind Talkers, Battle of the Bulge, Red Tails, Enemy at the Gates, and Flyboys.
Flyboys is such a bad movie.
Is that the one? Yeah. That's the freaking James Franco.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, that one was terrible.
I remember seeing that because when I was a kid, I was so into I used to be really into planes when I was a kid, and I loved biplanes.
Mhm.
And so I remember my dad showing me that movie, and even as a kid, I was like, "Is this even like what it was like? Is this even accurate? I don't think this is true." But I digress. What I like about Pearl Harbor, plot-wise, because there is a plot in this movie, is that it's not just about Pearl Harbor. I remember seeing this for the first time and being like, all right, they attacked Pearl Harbor. We're all set to go. I went back to the TV guide, and I was like,
oh, it's
there's 2 hours left in this movie.
3 more hours left.
Yeah. So showing the Doolittle raids, I appreciated that they like actually extended the story past Pearl Harbor. I think Pearl Harbor would be worse if they actually ended it at Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, that's the one thing I have a problem with Tora, where it's the Enterprise is coming back in, and then the Admiral is like, all right, we good to go? And everybody, are we good to get refueled and head out tomorrow? He's like, yeah. It's like, all right, cool. And then it just ends. It's like, what? That is a terrible way to end the movie. Terrible way. But I do like the Doolittle raid. I appreciate the showing of the Doolittle raid. I think that's one of the very first movies that actually does show the Doolittle raid, if I'm not mistaken. At least to that degree, where it's like an actual 45-minute segment of like, here's the planning of it. Yeah,
the fact that it was actually something nobody had
ever done before, and a bunch of those mad lads himself. Yeah. Did you know the Doolittle raid was filmed on the USS Constellation?
For the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that was one of the biggest inaccuracies for this, was the fact that they filmed on modern day aircraft carriers. Yeah. Which are not aircraft carriers from the 40s.
My dad was on that. He was actually...
Really?
They were on deployment when they came to film.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
they were not allowed on the flight deck. And
understandable.
My dad was asleep because he was working nights, but he says it was like a big deal. Because they actually flew in all the main actors and stuff. And really? Landed them on the ship.
That's kind of cool.
It was crazy.
Yeah, because I remember reading through the Wikipedia page and saying that when they were filming the attack on Pearl Harbor sequence, they were filming at Pearl Harbor. Yeah. And so a lot of the Navy men who were stationed there got to be extras in the movie. So that actually makes sense they would film on the real. Even though, like I said, the aircraft carriers weren't accurate
not at all.
to how they were.
The fact that the Japanese aircraft carriers have metallic launch decks.
What can you do?
It's flight decks and not wooden ones. It's like, is that accurate? There was a big controversy. I remember with a lot of the survivors were like, why would you use American carriers as Japanese ships? And why would you dress up an American carrier as a Japanese ship and all this other stuff? And I think Michael Bay or one of the producers just straight up pointed out, like, we don't have any Japanese carriers left. You guys sunk them all. And the guys were like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. All right, yeah, that's cool. You guys could use them.
It's one of those things where it's like, to some degree, just CGI them. But it's like, I at least respect that they made them
actually went
practical aircraft carriers.
They're actually on physical land.
Yeah. Dude, filming out at sea must be painful for sound guys.
I bet. How do you feel about Ben Affleck?
Okay, so seeing as this is young Ben Affleck, and now whatever he's doing nowadays, I didn't really mind it as much. Because back then he was just possible generic action hero.
He was a heartthrob.
Yeah. And so I was like, he's just doing his thing, you know?
Yeah.
I probably had more concern with whatever the name of his co-star is, who plays his
Josh
friend.
Hartnett.
Yeah. I didn't really care for whatsoever, even just as an action character. And a lot of that came down to the romantic subplot.
Oh, yeah.
Where I was just like, you're going to sleep with your best friend is dead, and now you're going to sleep with his girlfriend?
The same night.
Yeah.
My man said, I don't sleep. I'm on that Sigma male grind set.
But with Ben Affleck, my only issue was I had no idea what his character's name was.
Rafe.
Yeah. Just name him Joe. Also, his accent was terrible. His southern he goes really hard on the southern accent,
Yeah.
and it's so.
Ben Affleck, just stick to what you do good.
Yeah.
Play either Boston characters or just middle America characters.
Yeah.
Don't. I mean, the guy's doing well for himself. He's
Yeah.
not gonna listen to two podcasters.
Michael Bay, we have to go back.
All right, let me ask you this. Would you consider this one of Michael Bay's better movies?
Yeah.
If you had to rank them.
I barely seen any of them. Michael Bay is one of those directors who it's like I will only watch it.
I'll tell you
if
right now.
it's-
Transformers 2, Transformers 3, and Transformers 4.
What's funny is
So much better than this movie.
I was at least gonna put the first Transformers movie up there for sure. Why did you pull up a list of it?
Yeah. So Bad Boys, The Rock, Armageddon, Pearl Harbor, Bad Boys 2. That's a run right there.
Yeah.
From 95 to 03.
I was gonna say I forgot you did Bad Boys.
Yeah.
So
That's a run.
it's part
Regardless
of
of how you feel about those movies critically.
it's at least part of the reason why he still has work today.
Those are some,
Yeah.
and then he does Transformers through the 2000s, and it's kind of hit or miss after that. Actually, a lot of misses. Yeah, a lot
But
of
they
misses.
make money. They make money. So yeah, you want to move on to Midway?
Yeah, we can move on to Midway. Roland Emerick, who I think
And
everyone in
equal to Michael
Hollywood,
Bay.
yeah, I think everyone in Hollywood has their own issues with. He was the OG Michael Bay before it was cool to be Michael Bay.
He took the bullet before.
He did Independence Day, right?
Independence Day,
Let's
yep.
pull up his IMDb real quick.
He did Independence Day, and he did 10,000 BC.
He did 2012,
2012.
The Patriot, The Day After Tomorrow.
Unironically, not a bad movie.
Not a bad movie at all. Let's see here. White House Down. Okay, this is.
Oh, but he also did the Matthew Broderick Godzilla.
So he went White House Down, 2012, 10,000 BC, Day After Tomorrow, Patriot, Godzilla, Independence Day, from 96 to 13. So he's a guy. We'll say that much.
He makes a specific kind of movie.
Yeah.
Focus on disaster movies and CGI fests.
Yeah.
At least he has his niche. I will give him that, especially because having worked in the industry as an openly gay man for as long as he has, at least he has a niche.
Sure.
But some of those movies, it's like Day After Tomorrow is, in my opinion, actually not a bad movie. And 10,000 BC is also, in my opinion, at least a movie I voluntarily watched on my own. But like Anonymous, the 1997 Godzilla.
2012. 2012 is a really good
2012
eye gore movie.
That's true. Yeah.
If you just want to see stuff blow up and you're bored at
2012 is your movie.
At 5 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon,
For sure.
it's like just put on 2012 and
Yeah.
pop some popcorn. He makes good movies, at least post 2000 and whatever, that you're good to just make fun of or just to laugh at.
Yeah.
Not in a way where it's like, you're a bad filmmaker, but in far as like, this is so inconceivable, but I'm enjoying this.
I feel like Midway at least proves that, if you do one thing long enough, you're going to hit gold at some point.
Well, it should be said, Midway is a kind of branch away from that because the Patriot and 10,000 BC are not at all historically accurate. And once again, go to history buffs. He talks about this. He talks about this way more than we could. But I remember thinking of hearing about this movie, and I was like, "This movie looks stupid.
Yeah.
There's no way this is gonna be real." And then I actually watched it, and I was like, "Holy shit, this movie's actually pretty damn good for a war movie. It's pretty good." I know you had never seen it prior to us, and I remember I've talked about it multiple times before. But to me, what stood out the most was just the historical authenticity of this movie.
That stood out to me after I watched it and I looked it up and I was like, wait a second.
Yeah.
All of that was actually, like, even elements of the movie where I was like, this is just such a...
Yeah. Yeah. Like, there's a scene when a bomber goes and it looks like it's going to take out one of the Japanese carriers and it really doesn't. And then it, like, grazes the brig And then a lot of people were like, "Oh, that's not." I think even IGN shout was like, "That's not realistic. Like, why would you put that in your movie?" Go look up accounts of this war or this battle. This actually happened.
Yeah. Or when freaking a Japanese Zero is about to crash into the deck of an American
Nick
carrier,
Jonas
and Nick Jonas
shoots
runs
it down
into a plane and shoots it down.
Yeah.
Just as it like barely crashes into him, and then he gets promoted on the spot. That like actually happened to that guy.
It's crazy, right?
Like, I remember watching that and being like, "What? Why did this turn into a Nick Jonas vehicle for 5 minutes?"
I remember. After watching, I was like, there's no way. And then I looked up actual YouTube videos of what happened at the Battle of Midway. I was like, holy crap, he actually got it to a T.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of to a fault, you could say. It's extremely on point as far as detailing everything that went down and why everything went down. Which is another thing that I appreciate about this movie is just the psychoanalysis of why this battle went down the way it went down.
I definitely appreciated how this movie my biggest issue with Tora is it focuses too much on the strategy. Like I said, it's just exposition dump for like
it's
2
not
hours.
It's not even like Midway is why things are gonna happen the way they're gonna happen. Tora was just how are we gonna attack Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. Well, what I was gonna say was Midway, it feels like it's really 50-50 because this movie, despite the title being Midway, shows a lot of the
Prior
beginning
to,
of the Pacific Theater.
I mean, it's the first 6 months of the war, really.
Which I really appreciated how they keep the strategy light, but there are, they go back and forth between the actual commanders and the ships themselves. So I really appreciated that about this movie. I remember one of the criticisms I read was that people was like, "Oh, it was too boring. It felt like a slog." And I was like,
"Nah, those people are drunk or sniffing glue or something."
At least interested in everything. Now, what I did like about this movie too was watching it, having seen Pearl Harbor, and seeing all the same events, but how they're portrayed just ever so slightly differently. Yeah. Like, obviously, there's stuff that you're gonna get right, like.
The Arizona sinking
has to be done the exact same way because that's how it happened in real life, which even seems fake when you watch it.
Yeah.
But
there's no way. Yeah, it's weird thinking of just a ship that massive just gone of one hit.
Yeah. And not even that, but the fact that the bomb
landed perfectly in the magazine.
Right in the middle and didn't blow up, but then just cut the ship in half. And you're just like, I think you'd be right. No, that's what happened.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Or the Doolittle raids.
Yeah. Bunch of mad freaking lads.
That also appears in Midway as well. While it's raining, it doesn't rain in Pearl Harbor as they're taking off.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I also think in this movie, and I was telling you this beforehand, the cast stood out a lot more than it did in Pearl Harbor, as slightly better, in my opinion. Patrick, what's his last name? Wilson. I will never memorize your name, but I respect you in every role.
You are Ed. What is it? Warren.
Yeah.
Ed Warren.
Oh yeah, he is Ed Warren.
Yeah.
That's where I remember him from.
Shout out Ed. He's also freaking in Aquaman. I forget what the character. Orm or something. Orm. There you go. Orm. Jesus. He's Orm.
Woody Harrelson.
Go get that
who
paper,
I didn't
Patrick.
remember. I swear, I thought like. I'm gonna be honest. I thought he was Jeff Bridges for like this.
Woody Harrelson?
Yeah. I don't know why I thought that. I was just like, no, I thought he was Jeff Daniels. Is Jeff Daniels in this movie?
I don't think so.
No? I thought he was Jeff Daniels this entire time.
Dennis Quaid is in this movie too, though.
You were right when you said that this whole movie is filled with, hey, I know him.
Yeah.
But what's his name?
You know all of these actors from at least 2 other movies. It's just you don't know.
Even Nick Jonas,
names.
I was like, is that Joe Jonas? Is that which brother is that?
No, I knew that was Nick Jonas right away.
I had no
Shout
idea.
out to
his mustache just hit him so well. I had no idea.
Whenever they ask about how does Superman get away with a glasses, it's like, have you seen Nick Jonas with the mustache?
For real.
Didn't even know he was in this movie.
Oh man.
Yeah, well, that's gonna do it for. No, I'm just kidding.
All right. So
It should be noted though that it had mixed reviews from critics and was also a box office bomb. Which, if we're basing it off of how Tora Tora was and also how Pearl Harbor went,
yeah,
it's good. It's a good sign
Yeah.
considering Pearl Harbor was commercially successful
yeah.
and Tora Tora wasn't, and this movie wasn't. So I
Now-
guess there's just not a market for historically accurate war movies.
Also, I think, when did this movie get released? 2019?
2019.
So part of it is just,
It also came on a really stacked year.
yeah,
Yeah,
the timing of
we've
some
talked
of this
about
stuff.
2019 before. How stacked that year was.
Now, comparing all three of these movies together, one of the things that I was really paying attention to was how the special effects impacted how they portrayed these fight scenes. Because
Yeah.
I feel like, to Midway's credit, I feel like it could only be as accurate as it is
Mm-hmm.
because so much of it is CGI and special effects.
Yeah.
I feel like with miniatures, like with Tora Tora, you probably wouldn't be able to do many of the historically accurate fight scenes, or
Yeah,
at least the
yeah.
elements of the fight scenes that are accurate.
Yeah.
Like at the ending when he basically dive bombs into the carrier and just gets away at the last second. Like, to do that with a miniature would probably be extremely...
You're killing a pilot.
Yeah.
That stuntman's gone.
Yeah. So, to Midway's credit, I think it was helped.
Yeah.
Well, maybe helped is the wrong word.
It
but,
also,
like,
the thing that I was surprised at how much I like because of the fact that it's a CGI gore fest.
mhm.
It's a good thing, like I said, in some parts.
There are
But
so
the
many
thing-
scenes where I'm just like, clouds don't look like that.
But the thing,
Water doesn't shine like that. Is this Life of Pi?
yeah, the one that pissed me off was when the plane touches the water as it's going down. I'm like, nah, that fucking plane's dead. Like, there's no way that plane's gone. But I think what really was enhanced by that is the actual dive bombing scenes.
Mm-hmm.
We saw this with Dunkirk to its discredit, I would say. Like how when you go full practical, I love Nolan. I love practical effects. There's a time and place for both.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Dunkirk showing a more clean version of that doesn't really help as far as portraying the craziness and
How visceral it
yeah
was for the pilots.
and
specifically.
seeing the pilots go down and it's just like boom 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 and that score is just like Modern Warfare 3 just full volume
Yeah.
like dur, dur, dur.
Yeah.
It's like damn, this is crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
It just shows the kind of honestly, it just shows for lack of a better term, I apologize, but it just the balls on these guys.
had,
Yeah. That's
I
exactly
felt
what I was
that
gonna
watching
say.
this movie because like halfway through, halfway through watching it, I was reading the Wikipedia and I saw that it was super historically accurate. And then when it got to the actual midway fight, and I'm watching these guys do the dive bombing, I'm like, wait, they actually did that in real life?
They would go,
That
they
is-
would go.
Insane.
Yeah, there's multiple videos showing the actual like logistics of dive bombing and how, but they were some crazy dudes.
Yeah.
And they were built different. That
Matters
they are
that
the actual
they were built
definition
different.
of built different.
Yeah.
Like not this.
Them and the Doolittle guys.
They were ridiculously crazy just to
Yeah.
be able to do that, and because nobody really believed in their philosophy.
Mhm.
The philosophy at the time was we're going low and slow. We're shooting torpedoes because torpedoes are more accurate,
Mhm.
which wasn't the case for the first couple years of the war. But these guys were like, nah, fuck that. We're going straight in and we're
Yeah.
just going to blow stuff up. And it's like, you guys were actually right. Holy crap.
That was my favorite part. At the end of Midway, before the credits roll, they do one of those like "Where are they now?" kind of segments.
Yeah.
And for the lead character, who's the actor name, he was kind of an unknown actor.
Ed Skrein.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't recognize him from anything else.
He was the villain in Deadpool.
I've never seen Deadpool,
There you go.
but he was really good in this movie. I thought, even though his accent was trash
Yeah.
too. But his character, who he's based on in real life, when they do their like "Where are they now?" section, they have a quote from like some colonel or even like an admiral where they're just like, his blatant disregard for safety helped us win the war. That was like, at least they acknowledge it. At the very least, they acknowledge that it was extremely dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of the story of a lot of these extraordinary servicemen in this war where it's like the Pacific, there was a scene where they're on Guadalcanal and the gunner is just like, like, forget it, I'm doing everything, like, put me on the back of put the team on my back, coach. Like, I'm gonna shoot some Japanese here at this fortification, then I'm gonna run around, I'm gonna go get ammo, I'm gonna go kill some more Japanese that are trying to invade. I'm doing it all. And it's like, holy shit. Like, these are real life people. And I think showing guys like that it's the ultimate honor of these guys, because this generation, I mean, hot take, is the greatest generation we know of, at least of Americans. Just, the stories that they did, and to go into the fiery depths of hell on both sides of the war.
Yeah, that's true. We didn't really get around to watching. We'll have to do this at some point then in the future, but we didn't get around to watching exclusively Japanese perspective movies.
Yeah.
Which, thanks to my dad, we have a massive list of them.
Oh, yeah.
But we just didn't have time to watch all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the only thing I don't like about this movie is there's some lines of dialogue that are a little like, all right, okay, it's a little Hollywoodization there. And the ending, there's an ending quote, or not quote, but like a remembrance thing where it says, shout out to the, I'm paraphrasing here, but shout out to all you men out there. No, it says this movie was made in remembrance to the Americans and the Japanese who fought at Midway. And when I saw that, I was like, do we really need to shout out the Imperial Japanese?
I felt that way too, where I was like, for how they portray the Japanese in this movie, not say that it was outwardly disrespectful.
No, because it's actually accurate.
But it was such an American focused movie that for them to be like, oh, by the way, and thank you, like, this is dedicated to the Japanese.
Yeah.
I was like, they probably had a total like 5 minutes of screen time in a 2.5 hour movie.
And all of the screen time they were doing some war crime.
Yeah. So
yeah, this is the one thing I didn't like about this movie.
I mean, on the surface level, it means something, nevertheless.
It rubs me a little bit the wrong way, just because.
My biggest problem with this movie is just there are so many shots where I'm like, what I appreciate about what I appreciate about Pearl Harbor was that they were on real aircraft carriers. What I didn't like about Midway was that
they were
it
not.
Was just so obvious.
CG. Yeah.
For real. But other than that, this was easily my favorite one of the three.
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree.
For sure.
I would agree.
Probably would watch it again if I had to choose.
We have it in 4K.
You're so proud of that fact.
It was on sale at Best Buy. I had to get it. Yeah, I don't really know.
We really just managed to get to Pearl Harbor focused stuff.
40 minutes in?
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about
some of the...
I don't know.
You've been watching The Pacific.
I have been watching The Pacific.
What do you think about it?
Pretty good.
So
I'm 4 episodes in. I really like it. It's not as strong as Band of Brothers, which is obviously what it's going to be compared to.
Well, I told you it doesn't start as strong as Band of Brothers.
Yeah.
It's really when they get to the island hopping. Because then each episode will basically be a new...
separate island.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I'll get there when I get there. I'm I'm excited. Yeah, I don't really know what else we need to talk about.
We like
the Japanese side
movies in total. Yeah.
I don't know.
We didn't get to anything. Although, and I think we should include the list that my dad gave me.
Pull up the list.
Yeah, we'll include that for you guys in the description.
Just pull out your phone.
Oh my God, let me.
You don't have your phone on you?
I told you I didn't have my phone on me.
Oh shoot. Okay, never mind.
That's why I told you your computer.
I might do it. I might not. Depends on how I feel about.
It's really long.
About editing. Did you know that Midway? Before we go, did you know that Midway is the highest budgeted independent movie?
Who produced it?
Roland Emerick himself.
Really?
Yep.
All that.
He got all the financing.
Independence Day money.
He got financing all from himself. I think he had like partners and stuff, but.
Well, yeah, obviously.
But no, it was not like a big studio.
That's crazy.
I guess studios just didn't believe in a historically accurate CGI war movie. CGI fest.
To some degree, part of the reason why it was a bomb then was because, I mean, if you're financing a movie yourself, how much of that is going to go into marketing? Yeah. Well, it should be said that trailer is garbage. I don't even remember a trailer for this. I remember a trailer for this, and I thought it was garbage. But that's only why. That's why I think marketing probably. I think my dad went and saw this. I don't remember if he liked it or not. I think he did, but he, as you know, is also a big history buff. Mm-hmm. But I didn't even really know that this movie existed. Yeah, until he went and saw it. And And I was like, isn't that Roland Emerick? I don't know if I want to see that. Nevertheless, it is a good movie.
Well, let's talk about the acting in this movie real
Yeah.
quick before we go. We talked about Pearl Harbor's acting. How do we
Mhm.
feel about Midway's acting? Actors.
The actors.
We kind of mentioned it, but we just
We
kind of
mentioned
it
that
in
we
passing.
recognized all of them.
Yeah.
I think they did. Whether or not Patrick Wilson's Japanese is any good is up for debate. But I thought they. This is definitely what I want out of most war movies, where it's like the actors are just vehicles for.
Don't do too much.
Yeah.
You're
don't do
playing
too
real
much.
life people.
Mm-hmm.
Just do what the facts are. And
Yeah.
do it. I really appreciated Woody Harrelson's character.
Yeah, I love
Nimitz.
Jeff Daniels.
God damn it. I hate you. No, but Nimitz, there's a lot of people who say that Nimitz was very calm and collected, and when the attack happened and he took charge of the Pacific Fleet, he wasn't, to his credit, he was not like going down the list of who was at fault. He was just like, hey, it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get together and let's go win this damn thing.
I thought that was a really good scene in the movie where he's like, man, I don't envy that guy who has to do that job. Wait, it's me? Okay.
Yeah, that was, and how much he actually trusts the Patrick Wilson character, because nobody else wanted to trust him. And yeah, I also think these movies do a really good job of just portraying the evolution of warfare.
Yeah.
Where it's like pre-World War II, it's antiquated, radar's still not really a thing. We're still using battleships predominantly in naval warfare.
Code breaking by hand.
Yeah.
turning
We have to
machine hasn't
actually
been invented
go
yet.
to the commander's office and actually hand in a note that says, or call him and be like, yo, this thing is happening right now.
Yeah.
And by the time he gets the note, it's already 10 minutes too late.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really cool to show just how far we've come in 80 years. Because it's absurd to me that it's only 80 years. But at the same time, it's 80 years.
What I appreciated about Midway was how it showed the progression of the morale at the beginning of the war. From Pearl Harbor happens, everyone thinks, dang, they got us, this sucks. And then the Doolittle raid, we're like, okay, we can harm them. And then Midway, and it's like, okay, no, we can win this.
Yeah.
For real.
Because, you know, we are the predominant superpower, for better or worse. You can make your own opinion on that. Not to say either side is wrong, but we're the predominant superpower. So we have never really seen what it's like to not be the big baddies on the block.
Big man on campus.
And the Japanese at this time were so... I mean, there's a line where they go through, you know, the Japanese and their capabilities. But they were legitimately... They had better equipment. I mean, we were still using World War I dreadnoughts and cruisers.
You would know stuff like this.
In Pearl Harbor. I mean, the ship that sinks the Japanese sub in the beginning of the attack was a World War I era. Yeah. It was like commissioned in 1919. So it's like we're still using old ass stuff. Sorry for cursing. We're still using old stuff. And so to show that we're like, we have to just be better in a way, because the Japanese were the predominant, the dominant
in the
naval
ocean,
force in the world, really. So I thought that was pretty cool to show, like, America strapped up its bootstraps, and got shit done.
Yeah, for real.
Which was cool.
And then for like later series, what I appreciate about the Pacific is that it, in terms of how the morale of the war changes, is it does a good job of showing, because these movies don't, but the Pacific does a good job of going into the fatigue of the war. Yeah. Because like the what the Battle of the Bulge was for the Eastern Theater, island hopping was for the Pacific for sure. And I think the Pacific, the miniseries that is, goes into that pretty well. Yeah. I have not seen Letters from Iwo Jima yet. We're gonna have to do an entire other episode.
We'll do a part 2 of Pearl Harbor.
When's Victory in Japan Day?
Pearl Harbor. It's in May.
So
no, August.
Come August, we'll be able to do another episode on all this.
Yeah, probably.
We gotta watch Human Condition, man. 10 hours, black and white, subtitled. It's on Criterion Collection.
We'll do it.
I'll watch it. You know me.
Let's talk about this real quick before we go. I keep saying that, but
we just gotta extend this out as far as possible.
Well, it is a thing that I think is
Worth mentioning
is how the Japanese are portrayed in this movie.
That's true. I think this was probably arguably better than Pearl Harbor.
Oh yeah, definitely.
For sure.
Definitely.
So watching Pearl Harbor, I was like, this looks like not.
The problem with Pearl Harbor was it was stereotypical bad guy
Yeah.
and not actually what the Japanese were capable of.
Yeah.
Because there's a scene when they go strafing the hospital, and a lot of Japanese people came out and said, "No, we never attacked. You know, we did all this other bad stuff, but we never attacked. You know,
nurses
and doctors while they were attending to the wounded." And Michael Bay was just like, "Yeah, I just wanted to add it in there just because it makes you guys look bad." It's like, no, that's not how you make a historically accurate movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, just show them doing bad shit, like bombing Chinese civilians for no reason.
Yeah. What I appreciate about Midway was when it came to the Battle of Midway and it focused on the admiral, or not the admiral, and then there was also the captain of the ship. Those were two separate characters.
Yes.
I appreciated their portrayals of, you know, towards the beginning of the movie, they're like, we can totally crush these guys. We got this. And then throughout the Battle of Midway, they slowly come to the realization of, never mind. The only concern I would have for people watching it, I think the ending of Midway when they stay on the sinking ship, I don't want people to think that that's like a stereotypical Japanese thing of a portrayal. If your ship is sinking and you're the captain, it's your responsibility.
Yeah.
That's just like naval code, like around the world.
Yeah.
You go down with the ship if you're the captain. That was the only thing. And the guy who stuck around with him, I don't know if that was accurate. Was it? They say that?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm looking
either.
it up right now.
But nevertheless, showing something like that, I appreciate. Yeah. Do you remember when that cruise ship in Italy sank? Or not
yes,
sank,
and
got on
the
its side?
captain aborted.
Abandoned ship like immediately, and the dude straight up got arrested for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is, you have to stay on your ship. It's your responsibility. And I always appreciate that when movies about boats show that aspect to it. Shout out to the Titanic that does it as well. I love that.
It's a big honor thing.
Yeah. And it's just like as a matter of being a seaman.
Yeah.
For sure. So I always appreciated that. But other than that, I mean, like I said, the Japanese aren't really in this movie for that long. But this movie also, Midway focused on the pilots, had some of the Japanese pilots, in it, which I also appreciated. And Tora does too. One of the things about Pearl Harbor, so Midway doesn't show this. I don't remember if Tora showed this though. But how they knew they were getting close to Pearl Harbor was they were listening on radio waves.
Yes, Tora does that too.
They had the Hawaiian music was coming through, and that's how they knew they were getting close.
That's how they knew they caught the element of surprise.
Yeah.
Because if,
they had like
they're getting it bombed,
sirens.
There's obviously going to be air sirens.
So that scene in Tora, and they include it briefly in Pearl Harbor. That's one of my favorite facts from the attack on Pearl Harbor, and I love that both those movies included that.
Yeah.
For sure. Pearl Harbor is only in Midway for like maybe 10 minutes. It's not really a big focus of the movie.
It's more of a thematic focus.
Yeah.
Than a let's watch this bombing sequence for a half hour.
Yeah.
30 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever. Yeah. I'll say that much. Cool.
I don't have much else to say.
Nor do I. So we are out of here.
Not bad. Almost under an hour.
Almost under an hour. Probably under an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, we're out of here. Don't know what we're doing next week. We haven't planned that far out. But I do know that at the end of the month is going to be pretty busy. We have Spider-Man.
Licorice Pizza. Lord of the Rings.
And Lord of the Rings' 25th anniversary.
How far are you into that book?
Page 150. I think I was 150 2 weeks ago. So I'll get there by the end of I'll get there.
Don't worry. I didn't even finish Dune by the time we saw the movie, so it doesn't matter.
I'll get there. But anyways, that's it for us this week. Thanks, you guys. And remember Pearl Harbor, always. Even 80 years later.